Right now, in a pet store near you, there is a very high chance that the really expensive exotic fish swimming in the premium display tank is actually a genetic reject.
Yeah, it's wild to think about.
It really is. I mean, it might just be a counterfeit wearing this luxury price tag, swimming under a, carefully positioned spotlight.
Exactly. And the only thing stopping you from falling for it is basically sitting in your pocket right now.
Right, your smartphone. So have you ever walked into a retail environment, seen a premium price tag, and just wondered if you're actually getting the high-quality item you're paying for?
Oh, all the time. Your brain just sees the big number and assumes it's the best.
Yeah, it's a total trick. And today we are doing a deep dive into this deceptive dynamic in a really unexpected place, the local fish store.
Which is a fascinating industry to look at for this.
It really is. And to do this, we're looking at a brand new piece of source material published literally today, April 28, 2026.
Hot off the presses.
Exactly. It's an entry from a series called Notes on Fishkeeping, specifically part 243, by an author named Ang.
And the title of this one is great. It's called The Digital Guardian of Aquaria, Navigating Mislabeled Species.
Yeah, such a cool title. And basically, Ang has been touring all these various fish stores and documenting this massive disconnect between the labels on the tanks and the actual animals swimming inside them. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to start, the environment Ang describes in these storefronts is built almost entirely on visual appeal.
Right, you walk in, the lights are glowing, the water's bubbling.
Yeah, and it relies heavily on a massive gap in specialized knowledge. I mean, the average person walking into a store looking to set up an aquarium, they don't have a degree in ichthyology.
No, definitely not. I know I don't.
Right, so they are completely reliant on the seller's authority. And Ang's groundwork basically reveals that this authority is frequently flawed.
Flawed how, exactly?
Well, the fish species sitting in those tanks are actively and consistently being mislabeled.
Okay, but I have to push back on the underlying assumption there a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Is this really a case of, like, malicious store owners rubbing their hands together, actively trying to scam the average hobbyist?
That's a fair question.
Because, I mean, identifying the subtle genetics of these fish just seems legitimately hard. Could the local retailers just be getting scammed by their own massive wholesale suppliers?
Well, Ang actually addresses that distinction right away in the notes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ang notes that this mislabeling might be a highly calculated move to increase profit margins, or it might just be a complete accident.
Huh. So it could just be an honest mistake.
Exactly. I mean, what's fascinating here is that to understand how an accident like that happens, you have to look at the sheer mechanics of the global aquatic supply chain.
Right, because these fish are coming from all over the world.
Yes, millions of live animals are moved from massive breeding farms in Southeast Asia or Florida. They get packed into tiny plastic bags, shipped in styrofoam boxes, and routed through all these multiple distribution hubs.
That sounds chaotic.
It is. So by the time a box finally arrives at a local store, you have an employee who, honestly, might just be a teenager working a busy weekend shift, trying to unpack hundreds of stressed, pale fish.
Well, what, trying to read a wet shipping label?
Basically, yeah. They're cross-referencing a soggy invoice filled with incredibly complex Latin names. So the opportunity for just a simple clerical error is astronomical.
Okay, so a mix-up happens at the warehouse, the wrong fish goes in the tank, and the wrong label gets slapped on the glass.
Right.
But, I mean, the outcome for the buyer standing in the aisle is exactly the same either way, isn't it?
Absolutely. The intent doesn't change the receipt.
Right. You are being asked to pay a premium price for a fish that just does not warrant it. It's like ordering a rare artisanal coffee and being handed a cup of instant decaf, but still paying top dollar just because it's in a fancy cup.
That is a perfect way to put it.
But how much of this relies strictly on the buyer's lack of niche knowledge? Like, if they just knew a little more, would this still happen?
Well, it relies almost entirely on that knowledge gap, combined with what behavioral economists call the price-quality heuristic.
The price-quality heuristic. Okay, break that down for me.
So they've studied this extensively, often using wine. If you give someone a $10 bottle of wine, but you tell them it costs $100, their brain will actually interpret the taste as more complex.
Oh, wow. Just because of the price?
Yes. We essentially outsource our judgment to the price tag. So when a consumer lacks the internal database to evaluate a really rare species of fish, they look at the expensive sticker and just automatically assume they're looking at a premium specimen.
That makes so much sense. The seller holds all the cards.
Exactly. The psychological weight of the high price tag validates the incorrect label.
Which brings us to the specific physical evidence that Ang provides in these notes. Because we aren't just talking about, generic goldfish here.
No, not at all.
Ang highlights a very specific example, the, let me make sure I say this right, the Apistogramma agassizii double red.
You nailed it.
Thanks. But just hearing that name, it sounds incredibly scientific and expensive. Like, double red implies something highly curated.
It is highly curated. It's an incredibly specific line-bred trait.
Okay, so what exactly is this fish?
For context, an Apistogramma is a type of South American dwarf cichlid. In the wild, they just have a certain, standard natural coloration.
Right, nothing too flashy.
Right. But over decades, breeders have selectively mated specific fish to isolate and enhance certain genetic traits.
Oh, I see.
So the double red designation refers to this intensely vibrant, almost glowing red pigmentation, specifically targeting the dorsal and caudal fins.
Wow, that sounds beautiful.
It is. But achieving that specific genetic expression requires really rigorous multi-generational sorting.
And Ang confirms that the genuine variety of this fish, like the one you see in those glossy reference photos online or in magazines, is absolutely stunning.
It's a showstopper.
Right, but that pristine image completely clashes with what Ang is actually seeing in the physical store tanks during this investigation.
Yeah, that's where the deception comes in.
Because underneath that premium double red label, Ang is finding what they refer to as rejected batches.
Yes, the culls.
Right, these are fish with much duller, washed-out colors, or sometimes entirely different genetic varieties altogether.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the phrase rejected batches really pulls back the curtain on the biological reality of animal breeding.
How so?
Well, whenever you try to breed for a recessive or highly specific trait like that glowing double red fin, the genetics just don't cooperate perfectly every time.
Right, biology is messy.
Very messy. So a single spawn might produce 100 fry, but out of those 100, maybe only 15 exhibit the perfect, vibrant red coloration required to actually meet the standard.
Okay, so those 15 are like the A-list.
Exactly, the A-list. They get separated, graded, and sold to specialized collectors or high-end buyers who really demand perfection.
Leaving, what, 85 fish that are biologically the exact same species, but phenotypically just a mess?
Yeah, the color didn't pop or the genes just got muddy.
So what happens to those 85 fish?
They are the culls. And a breeder isn't going to just throw away 85 perfectly healthy fish. That's lost revenue.
So they push into the secondary supply chain.
Exactly. They get sold in bulk at a massive discount to the huge wholesalers who then distribute them to the local retail stores.
Wow.
Yeah. So the local store takes this duller, rejected cull, puts the A-list double red name on the glass, and charges the A-list price. It's a total illusion of value, finalized right there on the showroom floor.
And the financial stakes for the buyer aren't trivial here. Ang explicitly warns the reader about dropping a significant amount of money on a new or unknown species.
It adds up really fast.
Yeah, we are talking about $50, maybe $100 for a pair of premium cichlids, and the buyer is standing there in this humid store looking at a fish that has been shipped halfway across the world.
And that shipping process takes a toll. The fish is stressed.
Right, and stressed fish lose their color, don't they?
They do, significantly.
So the buyer is just trapped in this mental loop, thinking, is this fish dull because it's scared of the net and it will color up beautifully when I get it home? Or is it dull because it's a genetic reject?
And for decades, the consumer had absolutely no way to answer that question in the moment. The friction of verifying the truth was just insurmountable.
Because you couldn't exactly whip out a library catalog in the aisle.
Exactly. You either trusted the store owner, who, remember, has a direct financial incentive to sell you the fish, or you just had to walk away.
Right. You had to drive all the way home, boot up a desktop computer, log into some specialized hobbyist forum, or, pull a massive aquatic encyclopedia off the shelf.
And then try to cross-reference a mental image of a fish you saw 20 minutes ago.
Which is impossible.
Yeah.
By the time you identified the discrepancy, the moment was totally gone. The transaction was either abandoned or you had already been separated from your money based on an inaccurate piece of tape on a glass tank.
The environment completely dictated the power dynamic. You were playing an away game on the retailer's home turf.
But Ang's entry outlines this radical shift in how we navigate this exact scenario today. Now that the trap, which is the knowledge gap, is established, The solution is doing your own research.
But the methodology for that research hasn't just improved, it has completely transformed.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. Ang points to the rise of AI and large language models, LLMs, as the ultimate consumer shield.
Yes, the new frontier.
And the contrast here is just wild to think about. You are standing on a wet concrete floor, staring through a smudged glass tank at a tiny analog animal, and you are using a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-parameter neural network to figure out if the local pet shop is overcharging you by $30.
It is a profound collision of the physical and the digital worlds.
Absolutely.
This raises an important question about the tech itself. The language Ang uses to describe this is very specific. The notes say we can now get instant results to identify and research specific fish on the fly.
Right, on the fly.
And that capability fundamentally rewires the consumer experience because of how these models process information in real time. It removes all the pressure of the store environment.
Let's break down that mechanism, though. Historically, if I just type Apistogramma double red into a standard search engine, I get a bunch of text articles and some pristine, edited stock photos.
Which isn't very helpful in the store.
Exactly, because that doesn't help me evaluate the specific, dull, stressed-out fish sitting in the tank right in front of me. So how does an LLM bridge that gap?
It all comes down to multimodal architecture.
Multimodal? Oh.
Yeah, modern LLMs aren't just processing text anymore. They're processing visual data with incredible granularity.
So you just take a picture?
You pull out your smartphone right there in the aisle, and you take a photo of the actual fish in the tank. The AI model analyzes the raw pixel data.
Oh, wow.
It accounts for the distortion of the water, the glare of the horrible store lighting, and then it actually maps the morphological traits of the fish in your photo.
Wait, really? It maps the traits?
Yes, the specific shape of the dorsal fin, the lateral line scales, the current pigmentation levels.
It's essentially performing a biometric scan of a pet.
That's exactly what it is. And then it cross-references that morphological map against a vast synthesized database.
So it knows what it's looking for.
Right. The LLM has been trained on millions of indexed academic papers, ichthyology databases, and verified breeder photographs.
Okay, so it can tell the difference between a stressed-out premium fish and a cheap cull.
Precisely. It understands the biological difference between stress coloration and a genetic cull. In seconds, it synthesizes all that data and provides a localized output just for you.
That is incredible.
It can literally tell you the specimen in your photo lacks the elongated fin rays and basal pigmentation required for a true double red designation. You are likely viewing a lower grade cull.
So it completely strips away the pressure of the retail environment. You essentially have an expert ichthyologist sitting in your pocket, instantly analyzing the data while the salesperson is standing right next to you trying to close the deal.
It levels the playing field instantly.
The severe information asymmetry that defined this hobby for decades just collapses in a matter of seconds. You get to fact-check the premium label before you ever even reach for your wallet.
And this shifts the burden of proof entirely onto the retailer.
Right. They can't hide behind a fancy label anymore.
No, they can't. If consumers are suddenly armed with instant, accurate, visual identification tools, the whole business model of slapping premium prices on rejected batches becomes incredibly fragile.
A store owner can no longer rely on the buyer's ignorance to make a profit.
Exactly. The buyer transitions from being an uninformed target to being an active, informed auditor of the store's inventory.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? When we step back from the specific details of fish tanks and cichlids, this deep dive into Ang's notes reveals a much broader lesson about navigating any modern marketplace.
The principles apply everywhere.
Yeah. Knowledge has always been power, but today, the speed at which you can access and apply that knowledge is your armor. Whether you are buying a complex piece of electronics, an exotic plant, or dropping a significant amount of money on any niche item you don't fully understand, the core takeaway is the absolute necessity of being your own advocate.
Because the premium price tag is often just an illusion specifically designed to bypass your critical thinking.
Exactly.
Which perfectly justifies the poetic title Ang chose for this entry, The Digital Guardian.
It really fits.
These AI tools act as your personal, vigilant barrier against deceptive pricing and mislabeled goods. They interrupt the price-quality heuristic right before it forces you into a bad financial decision.
It's an amazing tool for the consumer, But, technology never just flows in one direction.
That is very true.
We spent this entire time talking about how the buyer is using AI right there in the aisle to pierce through the deception and identify these dull, rejected batches of fish.
Yeah.
But if these tools are universally available, how long until the deceptive sellers start using those exact same LLMs?
Oh, that's a chilling thought.
Right. If a store owner knows you're going to visually verify the fish with AI, what's stopping them from using AI to instantly generate highly convincing, incredibly detailed fake breeder backstories?
Or generating fake authenticity documents.
Exactly. They could print out a completely fabricated expert care guide and a fake lineage certificate to stick right next to the tank, justifying that premium price with synthetic authority.
It becomes a battle of the algorithms.
As multimodal models become ubiquitous, who ultimately wins the AI arms race at the local pet store, it's something to keep in mind the next time you find yourself staring at a premium price tag.
A very provocative question to end on.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. Keep questioning the labels, and we will catch you next time.